Jazz Club.
Hello and once again welcome to Big Wristwatches. I hope you have been enjoying my Iconic Watches video series. All the watches I have reviewed up until now are from my own collection, and because of the fact that I never buy a watch just for its looks, there's always an interesting story to tell about all of them. Now, my collection tends to change quite often, and I have plenty of watches to review for your viewing pleasure, so please keep posted. The watch we'll discuss today is the Heuer Monaco. And boy, does this one have an interesting backstory. It's one of those watches you can recognize instantly from across the room, which is a rare trait. It's also the watch for which I have received the most compliments. Now, I have to admit, since my love for watches is such a large part of my personality, it's fun to get noticed from time to time by what I call regular people, since it doesn't happen quite often. So, on to the story then. The year is 1969 and the times are exciting. The Americans have just landed on the moon and the time is right for watches to forever take their place in history. It was the year of the very first automatic chronographs, which was a revolution in its own right. Heuer, under the management of Jack Heuer, the founder's great-grandson, had just developed the caliber 11 automatic chronograph, and he wanted a revolutionary watch for its debut. It just so happened that the well-known Swiss case maker Piqueret had just filed a patent for a revolutionary square waterproof watch case. So Jack Heuer managed to secure the exclusive rights for this case, which would become the perfect vehicle for the new caliber 11 movement. Now, one thing you must understand was that the combination of an automatic chronograph in a square and a waterproof case was an engineering nightmare at that time. Making a chronograph waterproof was a challenge in its own because of the pushers, but waterproof watches had always been round, because using round gaskets was the only way up until then that watchmakers could make a case watertight. For a square case, obviously a square gasket was needed, which wasn't an easy feat at all. Yet somehow Heuer and Piqueret managed to do so anyway, and so the revolutionary Heuer Monaco was born. The name Monaco was chosen because of Heuer's recent commitment to Formula One racing. Just 1 year earlier, Heuer started sponsoring champion Formula One driver Joe Siffert. In those early days of Formula One, Monaco was one of the most difficult and technical tracks of them all. Winning at Monaco had become almost as important as winning the entire championship just because it demanded so much skill and nerve. That made it a very fitting name for Heuer's revolutionary watch indeed. The Monaco launched in Geneva and New York on March 9, 1969, and it was one of the most lauded watch introductions in history. Now, I wasn't born yet in the 60s, and sometimes I really regret that. That decade is considered to be the golden years by many, and for good reason. These were the years of excess and progression, when old dogmas would be torn down and when everything was possible. It was also the golden age of design, when revolutionary thinking became the new norm, and thus the Monaco was the perfect child of its time. Now, you would think a square case would be rather uninteresting, but Heuer and Piqueret managed to prove that assumption wrong. There are strong curved lines on the side of the 38mm case, which emphasize the brushed finish on top and the polished beveled edges. The sub-registers also have curved edges, which match the case design nicely. Then there's the horizontal markers on the dial, flowing from the circular inner minute track. There's a perfect balance regarding the use of colors too. The watch looks absolutely striking today in 2021, just try to imagine how it looked in 1969. With the release of the 1971 movie Le Mans, starring superstar active Steve McQueen, the Monaco's place in history was cemented. It was a movie McQueen absolutely dreamed to make, and much of it was shot around and during the 1971 24 Hours of Le Mans. Steve McQueen was perhaps an even more passionate racer than he was an actor. He owned a Porsche 908 himself and had a professional career as a highly skilled race car driver. Now, he wasn't allowed to participate in the 24 hours himself. The producers just wouldn't allow it. You must understand that car racing in this era was extremely dangerous, and the movie is lauded to this day to depict these dangers quite accurately. Regretfully, the 1970s also marked the start of the Quartz crisis, and Heuer didn't remain unaffected. The last Monaco to be produced in the 70s was the now famous Dark Lord with a black PVD case. Heuer consequently stopped producing Monacos in 1975. The Monaco now seemed dead and buried. An important milestone for Heuer came in 1985, when the brand became TAG Heuer by merging with TAG, short for Technique d'Avant-Garde. TAG produced high-tech items such as ceramic turbochargers for the Formula One industry. Additionally, a new partnership was forged with Formula One racing legend Ayrton Senna, one of my personal heroes. Regretfully, the decision to merge with TAG doesn't sit well with most enthusiasts, as they look back affectionately to the Heuer era. And it's true, the years after the acquisition weren't their finest, and there were quite a few questionable timepieces produced during this era, both design-wise as from a quality perspective. In my opinion, however, they have redeemed themselves in the past 2 decades, and they are no longer deserving of the negative comments that the TAG brand continues to trigger among watch connoisseurs. In 1979, TAG Heuer brought the Monaco back as a limited edition with a CS2110, of which they produced only 5,000 pieces. Out of respect for its heritage, the old Heuer logo was used on the black dial instead of the TAG Heuer logo. Because of the fact that the caliber 11 was long out of production, they used their bicompax caliber 17 instead. This meant that the crown moved to the right side of the case between the pushers. The following generation was the CS2111, still with the Heuer logo, and it sparked the permanent addition of the Monaco to the TAG Heuer catalog. Around this time, the classic blue color scheme was also reintroduced. Following his death in 1980, Steve McQueen would forever be known as the King of Cool. His legendary status had grown to even larger proportions than during the 70s, when the Le Mans movie was regarded as one of his lesser-known movies. TAG Heuer started marketing the new blue Monaco using McQueen's legacy, which proves to be a success up until this day. Now, there have been a few iterations of the McQueen re-editions. The first had a caliber 17, like the other Monacos from this generation, with a crown on the right. The dial was a sunburst blue, and the general vibe was one of a much more modernized iteration of the original design. In 2009, TAG Heuer started using the caliber 12 instead in the new reference CAW2111, also with a crown on the right. And the case size grew slightly from 38 to 39 millimeters. They also reintroduced the caliber 11 and released a special edition, the 40th anniversary Monaco. This watch featured the old 38mm case and is the only 38mm Monaco with a sapphire crystal. Starting in 2015, TAG Heuer started using the caliber 11 again in their general production of Monacos, which holds true to this day. This brought the crown back to the correct position on the left and the reintroduction of the vintage Heuer logo on the dial. For me, this was the watch to get, short of the original vintage Monacos. After all, a vintage blue Monaco easily fetches more than 7,000 euros these days, and it also wears much smaller than the modern one. I am over the moon when I get to see a vintage Monaco in the flesh, but the modern one just clicks more on the wrist. So that seamlessly brings us to my own watch. I have owned a caliber 12 in the past, and while I really loved the blue sunburst dial, I didn't really like the TAG Heuer logo on the dial and the crown on the right. Not because of the TAG connotation, but because a Monaco should wear the Heuer logo. It also looked as a too modern interpretation of the original Monaco, and thus it didn't really click with me. Now the 2015 model with the darker blue dial and the caliber 11 movement became love at first sight. I immediately knew I had to get myself one of these. The case is still a more modern wearing 39mm, and it wears much larger than the size would suggest. This is because of the square shape, but also because of its height, to which the crystal adds a few millimeters. The crown is on the correct side of the case, on the left, and the dial harkens back to the original McQueen Monaco dial with the original hour markers. Now, they have been modernized slightly, however, and they are made of polished metal. The dial is a correct subdued hue of blue, try to say that twice, and the white subdials stand out in stark contrast. There's also a subtle red accent on both the central seconds hand and hour and minute hands, along with the minute track. It all ties together beautifully, and it's the perfect marriage of modern and vintage in my opinion. The case back has a sapphire window through which you can see the caliber 11 movement ticking away happily. The rotor and movement are quite expertly finished with perlage. Now, it's not a Vacheron by any means, but it's still nice to look at and totally on par with the price point of the watch. Both the rotor and crown are also decorated with the original Heuer logo. It's shipped with a beautiful leather strap with Heuer folding clasp, but I have bought the original metal bracelet too, which I find of excellent quality, especially for the price. It's reminiscent of the original Heuer bracelets, but expertly brought into the 21st century. Now, it's not for everyone, I know, but for me it adds a little bling and class to the whole ensemble. I must admit I'm really a sucker for metal bracelets, so please forgive me. So I hope that I've rekindled your love for TAG Heuer watches a little bit in this video. In recent years, I have dropped my disdain for TAG Heuer, and I started looking at their watches with a clean pair of eyes. They occupy a price point in the Swiss watch industry that's generally lower than rivals such as Omega and Breitling. Now, they might not yet achieve the same level of quality, but in my opinion there's enormous value in their watches, and I would recommend the brand to anybody who wants an affordable and well-made Swiss watch any day of the week, especially if you get it secondhand. Now, the Monaco especially is a watch that I can recommend wholeheartedly. With its rich history and great looks, even 50 years after its introduction, just imagine. And on that bombshell, we have come to the end of another exciting video. I hope you have enjoyed this one, and if you did, please like and subscribe to my channel. I try to release a new video every week, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you next time. Bye!